Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there on what's turning out to be a rather nice day throughout much of the eastern part of the United States. In fact, there's just a few pockets of adverse weather going on here and there on this Mother's Day. Nothing major, but we'll talk about it all and more on today's Joe and Joe Weather Show. Brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in
West Babylon, New York, Suffolk County.
Yes, and they serve the entire New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, tri-state area, Joe. And whether you are a professional landscaper, which we know you are, or whether you're a do-it-yourselfer, which we know you are, just get your truck over to Omni and load up with all the mulch and topsoil or whatever else you need. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com. And I can't believe you said that well, let's put it this way. It is the mother of the house here, Mrs. Rayo, who has the green thumb.
Yes, and she also knows how to fix a chainsaw, which is even better.
That's true.
Brought to you also our newest affiliate, Tempest by Weatherflow. If you need a weather station, or if you need or are into weather gadgets and weather electronics and weather fashion, get the revolutionary Tempest weather system and join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link to this is going to be pinned momentarily on the top of the chat board because I forgot to do it this morning. And as we all know, we're always looking to save just a little bit of money in these inflationary times. So if you use the coupon code Joe and Joe Weather Show, you get
10. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10% off.
Which at least pays for the sales tax, which is a good thing.
Well, here in what's in New York now? 8 3/4%.
I think it depends on what counties. I think some are at 8, and I don't even know. Here in Georgia, it's 6%.
Okay. I'll move to Georgia.
This 3% is the state tax, and then the local taxes are the other half, which is here it's 3%.
Yes.
And then when they need, I learned yesterday, not in this county, but in other counties, they've done this when the county has a special project. They enact what's called a splatch, which is a special purpose sales tax addition. So they might add an additional 1%, but it's one of these taxes that expires. So they might only be for a year, or it might be for, whatever it is. Anyhow, enough of that. Happy Mother's Day. Not that we're mothers, we're fathers. I've always gotten a kick out of the fact that Mother's Day is just like this whole production. Okay. Not that it shouldn't be, but it's this whole production. And I think when it comes to Father's Day, I think most dads would agree. Can we just be left alone for a day? Just leave us alone for one day. No, inevitably, I used to, I would get the, you couldn't possibly be happy doing what you want to do. We're going to tell you what you're going to do to be happy. This is the way you need to do what to do to be happy. So anyhow, I say that every year, and it's just my little rant, just a tiny rant.
There's nothing like spending a Mother's Day in a traffic jam, desperately trying to get to a restaurant, which is jammed to the rafters with waitresses and waiters just running around like chickens without heads, trying to do their best to, you get the picture. You get the picture. And I've had a few of those kind of Mother's Days in the past, but
I had
for the moment at least.
We never did that.
You never did that?
No, my mother didn't believe in going to restaurants. She'd rather cook a big meal. Seriously, she would rather cook a big meal for everybody. That made her happy. And I'm sure she's not alone with that concept.
Whatever makes mom happy, go for it. Do it.
Yeah, but you're right. I don't do traffic. But the traffic jam in this town is when there's a second car in front of me at the four-way stop sign. So, although we did have,
Well, that's
although we did,
you mean to tell me you never wanted to take your mom to that beautiful restaurant at Crabwell Corners, which
no,
just opened up?
right, exactly. Um, Although we did have actually last Saturday, I don't think I mentioned it, but we had a huge cow. I mean, I've seen cow. This one was a big cow. Huge cow got out of the behind the dog park. There's a farm, and the cow got out. So the cow meandered down to Aldi's and was waiting outside there for a while. So that was that was the most excitement in this town since Mrs. Pickens lost her britches down down the well.
Well, it's a beautiful day out there. I've known I've known not a few Mother's Days that have been chilly, dank, dreary, even just downright cold. And I've known a couple of Mother's Days. One of them stands out in 1970, which was exceedingly hot. But this is about as nice a Mother's Day, a perfect a Mother's Day, as I think anybody could ask for.
Yeah, and the last two in the north, in much of the Northeast and Mid Atlantic were for the most part miserable days. So the last two are the last three. So it was about time we got to a nice weather day. Welcome to everybody on the chat board. I know we've got moms that are on the chat board today. So happy Mother's Day to you. And to those of you in the background, I don't think there's going to be many folks today because they're all out at brunches or on their way to lunches or dinners or whatever. But if you are new and this is the first time you're watching us, subscribe to the Joe and Joe Weather Show by hitting that subscribe button on my YouTube channel and set your notifications to on. And this way you get notified every time we are on, which is Monday through Thursday, Joe, at 7:35 p.m. on most weeks, and Sundays at 11 a.m. on most weeks, and Fridays and Saturdays, most of the time we're off. So that's how that works.
But we're on now.
And we are, and I have the watches and warnings map up in what really is a really fairly quiet weather day. There's not a whole lot happening that's adverse. I mean, there are a few pockets here and there. You can see the shaded green areas along the coastal bend of Texas, for example, and a few counties in north central Texas and into Oklahoma. Flash flood watches in those areas. Also in southwestern Minnesota. And we've got actually some heat advisories up along the Pacific West Coast, the Pacific Northwest Coast, Oregon into Washington State.
It's funny that once again, and this has been a habit almost the last few years, that the Pacific Northwest, which normally, I mean, a lot of people who live out there don't have air conditioning because it's normally a very cool environment. But once again, they are about to go through, well, they're going through right now a siege of unseasonably warm, if not downright hot conditions. And I could remember, I mean, was it last year, the year before? Like places in Oregon, Portland, they were at like 105, 110 degrees. I don't think it's going to be quite as hot this time around, but still, it's becoming something that is more of a normality over at least over the last few years out there.
It seemed that way. Satellite in the Northeast, though, and then down in the Mid-Atlantic states is other than just a few wispy clouds here and there, bright and sunny. I don't see that milky, smoky stuff that we had last week.
No, and in fact, I was out this morning and looking up, and we have a nice blue sky. So for the moment, at least, we're putting up maybe for who knows, maybe for a day at least. Mom does not have to look skyward and see or even try to smell the smoke.
Yes, exactly. And here's your wide satellite view. It's the middle of the country right now that's having some issues. We've got a trough that's off the East Coast, so we still have this northwest flow in the east. You could see much of what's been from Texas to the Dakotas has been there since the middle part of last week. And most of that is moving northward because of the way the upper pattern is. And in fact, upper lows are actually moving north and northwestward rather than moving eastward. Now, that may change as we go through this week, but at least for now, it's kept the east relatively dry. Weather systems have been getting shot out to the east into the western Great Lakes, weak pieces, but the bulk of the energy has been staying out in the west. So these weak pieces have come through. We saw some rain yesterday, southern Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey, down into Maryland and Virginia, and also some thunderstorms that occurred in parts of Virginia into North Carolina yesterday. Well, that's all kind of played out. Although there are some clouds across North Carolina, that's where the frontal boundary is. And along the West Coast, it's pretty clear. I mean, there's no clouds, lots of sunshine, and they're in something they're not used to. That's a ridge position, which they haven't really seen for pretty much all winter long. They were in a trough position out there. So now they're finally in a ridge position, and I guess they're not used to that.
Yeah. Well, our dear friend Dr. Cohen was pointing out, he was calling that a heat ridge in one of his tweets last week. The buildup of that ridge out over the western part of North America, and alluding, I guess, to, and what we're actually seeing is a spell of unseasonably warm, if not downright hot weather for those folks who live out in the west. Meanwhile, as you pointed out, Joe, here in the east, it's quite well, it always has to be. I mean, it's very rare that the entire country has similar or the same type of weather. I guess when the flow is zonal or more or less straight west to east. But we have a pattern like this where you have that big ridge out west. Here in the east, it's kind of a troughy type of condition, and that usually leads to a cooler airflow, and that's exactly what we're seeing here today.
Nice and quiet on the radar, obviously, up and down the East Coast. A couple of stray thunderstorms in southern Kentucky and central Tennessee. And also we've got some showers and a few downpours moving out of Minnesota and into Wisconsin. And we also, this is where it's a little bit busier today because we still got this flow from the Gulf of Mexico. And, there's sort of this upper low, or what's left of an upper low down in Texas. So streaming showers from there northward and some heavier downpours. And they extend up into Oklahoma and Kansas, which actually is a plus because a lot of this area has been in a drought phase. Some showers up in the central Rockies and extending westward into Idaho and Utah. And as we said, the West Coast is quiet. David Schwartz hitting Super Chat. Thank you, David, for hitting the tip jar, Joe. We'll just stop the weather for a moment and answer his question, which is, did you see the reports about astronomers spotting the largest cosmic explosion ever witnessed, 10 times brighter than any known exploding star?
I did not hear about that. I've been busy for the last few days, but that certainly sounds interesting, and I'll look into it. It sounds like a very interesting story.
All right, so then you will report on that tomorrow.
I will report.
You could do a live shot from Venus.
Don't put it off, Joe. I've been
right.
to a lot of weird places. So.
Storm Prediction Center, SPC, is getting a little bit of a breather. They have a small area of marginal to slight risk in parts of eastern Missouri, southern Illinois, into western Kentucky. That comes with a small tornado risk area of 2%. And then no severe weather tomorrow. Some general thunderstorm activity across the southern half of the U.S. and also up the Rockies into the Northwest. And for day 3, which is for Tuesday into Wednesday, a marginal risk, northeast Alabama, northern half of Georgia, including me. I could actually use some rain. Into South Carolina, western North Carolina, and Tennessee, but the northeast into the northern mid-Atlantic, west across the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and into the plains. Quiet. Then we got general thunderstorms for the Rockies. And as far as rainfall is concerned, on the tame side again, only a quarter of an inch being indicated from coastal Maine down into southern Virginia. There are some half-inch patches well inland, west of the mountains in upstate New York and in western PA. And also 3/4 of an inch to maybe an inch, inch and a quarter in the southeast and along the Gulf Coast. And 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half across much of Texas and Oklahoma into Kansas, Missouri, back into Colorado and into New Mexico. So nothing crazy, just a sort of typical. And however the pattern is set up, who's getting what. This week, by the way, going ahead to this week, Joe, this week in the Northeast and much of the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states, with just minor exceptions, looks to me like it's going to be dry right through Friday.
Right through Friday, yeah. So we were having a joke about that yesterday. My daughter's friend, she was the maid of honor at her wedding, and we were this coming Saturday. There's apparently a big flea market that's going to be happening here in Putnam Valley. My son, in fact, is going to have this big table with all kinds of stuff at the town park, and he comes up to me and he says, "So," I said, "Yeah." He said, "Beautiful weather all of this week." I said, "Yeah, it is." He says, "Saturday is the flea market." He said, "I hear there's going to rain." And I pulled out my phone. Yes, I've actually become enough so that I've been able to actually use the phone to take a look at some different websites, look at tropical tidbits. And it appears that by next Saturday, there's going to be some kind of a weather front or a cold front approaching with a big band of rain and showers. I said, well, maybe it'll hold off until later in the day. I said, things can change over a span of 5 or 6 days, but until then, until Saturday, that first threat of showers, it looks like indeed, Joe, a beautiful week. The only changes coming will be in the temperatures, kind of mild or warmish first few days of this week, and then it kind of cools off a bit when we get toward Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, I'm just running through the upper air here. I mean, we're still sort of holding on to this general principle of having troughing in the east in some fashion. There's a cutoff, almost blocky high that is in northwest in western Canada. Troughing that's running south along about 150, 155 out in the Pacific. That's sort of trapped there. So there's no real change here. There is what seems to be over the next 10 days and maybe a little maybe a 10 days or so, let's say 7 or 8 days, where you got this northwest flow from Canada, and then it just sort of relaxes and then starts to come back again as we head toward the end of the month. So there's really not much, this overall pattern, again, it shows up now as opposed for the winter weather lovers wanting to have something like this over the winter time, but that obviously did not occur. But as long as we've got some part of the jet stream moving in a general west to east fashion, that at least should allow weather systems to move along. There's one stretch here on the GFS on this run where you get some kind of cutoff that forms off the coast from this system next Saturday that drifts back westward. This is for the week of May 22nd. Who knows if that's correct or not, but that might be the one thing that might cause a complication in an otherwise generally benign weather pattern that lies ahead.
It is going to be as benign as you could possibly ask for. I mean, this, and if we can keep this up through the entire spring and summer, a progressive pattern, it will turn out to be, as was the case back, I think, in 2009, a Garden of Eden summer, at least here in this part of the country, with few hot and humid, sticky days and many nice days. But that doesn't tend to happen. I mean, usually such. I think once we get into later June or July and August, we'll be back to the same pattern that we are become so accustomed to in this part of the country during the summertime. But at least we have the nice weather now, and let's get out and enjoy it while we have it.
All right. So on the surface, you've got this high that's sitting in the Dakotas that's got pretty much enveloped around lower pressures that are down in the western Gulf states with an upper low, and in the meantime, we've got a nice high that noses in for today, obviously, and it lasted to Tuesday. And then, of course, you got weather systems in a pattern like this. They're coming down from almost straight from the north. So you've got this weather front that's dropping down out of eastern Canada Tuesday night. There's a little piece of that stuff that's in the plains that comes east also later Tuesday and Tuesday night. Most of that gets shunted down across West Virginia, southernmost New Jersey for a brief time, Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and then it goes out anyway. And then you get another high that builds in for the second half of the week. The one issue in terms of trying to warm temperatures up for the end of the week, Joe, is the fact that I think we're probably going to have a more of an onshore type wind with where the high is going off of Long Island or south of Cape Cod. So it opens the door up for east to southeast winds, and that's probably going to keep the temperatures from snapping back into the 80s like we saw on Friday. So instead, we'll probably be in the 70s, maybe even cooler than that along southern New England, Long Island, coastal New Jersey, down into coastal Delaware. And yeah, here comes, there's a front for the end of the week. And then we've got a low that is moving up the coast that forms off North Carolina that sort of rides to the east of the front. And it does bring some rain to the northeast, mid-Atlantic, and even the southeast on Saturday, to be followed by drier air and nice weather behind it into the start of the week of the 22nd. And there's that cutoff that it wants to do. So it's got this low that runs out to the east, almost to Bermuda, then goes north, and then just goes back northwestward. As I said there before, who knows if that's even real at this point.
Well, that high pressure is going to bring us wonderful weather probably for right in the middle of the week. So those of you who are, let's say, off Wednesday and especially Thursday, you've got some great weather to look forward to. And as I said a few minutes ago, as we head toward this upcoming weekend, low pressure will be moving on Friday through the Great Lakes, dragging a front in our general direction. And yeah, you're right, Joe. We do have this, what looks to be some kind of a coastal system trying to form off the Carolinas on Saturday. At the same time, we have the front moving in from the west, and that could provide a kind of a showery kind of day on Saturday. We will see. But behind that, yeah, next Sunday looks A-OK as well.
So I don't know if anybody, well, I'm sure maybe some of you have saw this. This I think came out on Thursday, and we didn't have a show Thursday, so I figured I'd bring it up today. But Joe, maybe you saw something about this, maybe you didn't. But if you remember back in January, mid-January, we had a low that was off the East Coast, east of the Delmarva Peninsula, that looked highly suspicious. And I remember we even commented on the fact that it looked like something more than just a plain old cold core storm. And lo and behold, the National Hurricane Center on Thursday issued a statement saying that this particular system, and I have the satellite shot here, I was able to find one of it, and they said that this system was a subtropical storm. So as a result, this is going to create confusion. But to be clear, because I'm sure when it happens, everybody's going to like, well, I don't remember when the other one was. So this basically is the first tropical cyclone of the season, even though it's subtropical. It's considered a tropical cyclone of some sort.
Does it get a name?
It does not get a name. It's just basically called Subtropical Storm 1.
Okay.
So the thing is, now when the next system, which normally would have been the first system, so all on the, I mean, it's all technical stuff that doesn't really matter to us, but, on the headers that they use, where they designated 01, 02, so Arlene, which is the first name, will actually be 02, the second storm, as opposed to the first storm. And I even saved the surface maps of that. I was able to get those. Actually, let me do this a different way. Hold on. Just a moment. Of course, now I can't get... It's not letting me get rid of this. Okay, so let's get WPC. All right. It's being evil to me right now. I'll bring up the surface maps of that day. And by the way, this storm really did not have much of any impact, really, to weather in the Northeast, other than the fact that, the ocean probably got kicked up. So we'll go to, this was Sunday, January the 15th. And there it is. I mean, if there's a 9 at that 12Z, if we want to go back, Um, let's go to previous, three, three. Hey, you can see trying to get this to go back far enough. Okay, so this is Saturday morning. And, there wasn't really much out there other than, a little low on a little old front. And believe it or not, this was on Saturday morning. We were in the 30s with a northeast wind, and it was in the 20s and teens north and west. So it must have been one of those rare days last winter where the temperatures actually were close to where they were somewhat close to where they were supposed to be for this time of year. But that low wound up strengthening. I guess there was some sort of upper energy that came down and cut off to an extent, and you could see it there. And then this is where it starts to get on Sunday morning. It gets really wrapped up in 988 closed isobar. So it looks like it was probably in 87 or 86-ish low. There was a buoy well to the northeast where it's got a 30-knot sustained wind. That was being reported at 1 a.m. in the morning on that Sunday. And then as we just moved along, it just sort of sat out there, and there you have it. So this was a subtropical storm. You can look on the satellite and say, yeah, it probably was.
Well, Louis Orizio points out, and he has a better memory than I do. He says that was a windy and cold weekend with flurries. So, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, the gradient certainly was tight with the storm offshore, and a little bit of, mix in a little bit of instability. Yeah, we could have had some billowing Q and even some scattered snow showers and flurries around. So, yeah, that's what happened on that day. But as you can see, Joe, the storm was just a little bit to the east of the benchmark. We use that benchmark to define major storms, winter storms in the Northeast. And this one just was a little bit too far out to the sea to have any real or significant influence to our local weather.
And one other thing we can take a look at here, and this was in the news the last couple of days because it reached Category 5 status as it was heading for Pakistan and Bangladesh. This is Tropical Cyclone Mocha, M-O-C-H-A, I think it's how it's spelled. And it has made landfall and did make landfall and continues to move to the northeast. It's not as strong as what it was. At one point yesterday, it was a Category 5. Now down to 105 knots. Tropical Cyclone Mocha, M-O-C-H-A, and here it is. I'll put it up on their forecast map so you can see the track. And it is
Mocha or Mocha.
I think it's Mocha.
Okay.
I think. Well, CH in Italian is pronounced K, so maybe it's Mocha.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it's inland in Pakistan and moving northeastward. So you can see there's still a belt of 105 knot winds being indicated with the system inland. So it's finding that the Indian Ocean's gets all this is sort of happens with the kind of pattern we have in the east, that the Indian Ocean winds up getting revved up with tropical cyclones, but that's sort of how it works. I don't know what phase of the MJO we're in. I usually don't pay much attention to that, even in the wintertime, unless somebody reminds me to look at the MJO or I read something about it. I really don't pay too much attention. So,
and this could be a major thing in Pakistan because Pakistan, the infrastructure is not built in the same way that we have here in the United States or in many of the modern countries. There are people who may very well, be in line to possibly losing their homes. Wasn't there back in November of 1970? I seem to remember.
In the 70s, there were a couple of cyclones there. When they went in, they basically swept like 10,000 people out to sea or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, in those days, those cyclones, certainly when they would come in, would be, incredibly devastating to human life.
Right. Not a pretty picture. And I know that so many different things are happening in our neck of the woods at this part of the world that, you know, this something like this gets swept under the rug. But this still could mean significant loss of life and also significant property damage to those people who live in that part of the world. So we are taking note of it, and we hope that everybody in that part of the world in the path of the storm manages to ride it out okay.
Yes. I do not have a Briller Jeopardy.
I don't think I have either.
Right, so he's got Happy Mother's Day to Mother Briller, by the way. The chairman, Scott Briller, taking care of his mom. So happy Mother's Day to Mother Briller, and hope it's a good day for you.
Well, we all hope it's a good day for all the moms out there.
Yes.
I don't particularly. I'll have to go upstairs and ask the executive producer what she wants to do, if she wants to do anything. But Joe, it's an empty nest here. I mean, our kids are same with you. Your kids are grown up and doing their own thing now.
Mm-hmm.
So just the two of us. Just the two of us.
Yes. Well, I had my
we can make it if we try.
I was. Keep trying. You've been doing it for a better part of, what is it, 30-something, 38 years, 37 years?
This I said on her Mother's Day card this morning. Isn't it funny? I mean, our wives are not our mothers, but we still end up giving them cards and gifts.
Well, that's because we want to live to see the next day.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, I've had that same thing, the same conversation. Do it quietly.
I just realized that on her card I put Happy 33rd Mother's Day, but in thinking about it, since our son was born in 1990 in October, in 1990 May, Mother's Day, she wasn't officially a mom yet. So this maybe is actually her 32nd.
No, she was a mom to be, so that counts.
To be, okay.
Well, she was
or
a
not
mom,
to be.
Whatever.
Yes.
We're going to get into minutia that's going to create an argument.
And my daughter,
okay, so just leave it.
And my daughter got a card on behalf of the dog. And this is something we used to have when we had our Yorkie. I used to always get a card on behalf of our Yorkie. And this year, now that we have a new pooch, my daughter got a card on behalf of our new pooch. By the way, did you know that there is an Ancestry.com for dogs?
I'm sure there is. Then why am I not surprised at this?
And we found out from this particular, because my daughter somehow or other was able to get enough saliva from our dog. Our dog is 40.1% Yorkshire Terrier, and a variety of other different dog species, including, they call it super mutt. I said, what the heck is a super mutt? That's when you have very tiny little percentages. Our dog has a very tiny percent of beagle in him, of poodle in him, but he's mostly he's Yorkshire Terrier.
How much did that set you back?
Didn't set me back. I don't know how much it set back.
It's not cheap. I think it's like $150.
Well, whatever it cost my daughter. It didn't cost me.
All right, then that's fine. Mine is, mine's half Aussie, half Border Collie, and I'm happy with that. I don't need to know that, he's got, and he probably has maybe some other herding dogs in his breeding, but I don't care. I barely know my own ancestry.
Yes. Anyway.
All right. So anyhow. Go ahead and finish your story.
No, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just say I think we've pretty well, in a very benign and quiet weather pattern, we've just about covered everything. And now we should, I guess, sign off and let everybody go their separate ways on this Mother's Day 2023.
Yep, time to say goodbye. It's going to reach mid-80s near my house today. Atlanta's going to go to 90, so I'm going to maybe go out into the town pool or something, or hang out by the river, kick my shoes off.
Come back now. Yeah.
I will. All right. So everybody, y'all come back tomorrow at 7:35 p.m. Eastern time, right here for the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Have a great Sunday. Enjoy your Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. and be well. See you tomorrow.
And thank you to David Schwartz for hitting the tip jar today.